Om Mahyanatimanasya Snakam Saksoni Tamlina Tasmai Siva Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nandi Namaste Saraswati Peko Vanya Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Dasatai Srila Prabhupada Ki. So we continue with the last part of the 14th chapter, the three modes of material nature, that how to transcend these modes of nature. First, you have to know that everything in this world takes place under the modes of nature. And then one must understand that Krishna and his activities are transcendental. And then one performs devotional service, pure devotional service, and then one comes to the level of the soul, and of which Krishna is the source. And then one transcends these modes. Arjuna will ask two questions in this section. He will ask first, what are the symptoms of a transcendentalist? And what is his behavior? Two questions. And in verses 23 till 25, Krishna answers the second question about the behavior. That in verse 22, he speaks about the symptoms of a transcendentalist as the first question. And in the last two verses of this chapter, 26, 27, Krishna discusses Ananya Bhakti, pure devotional service, as the method to transcend the modes. So we continue with text 19. Nayam gunebhya kartaram yada drastanu pashyati gunebhya sa param viti madbhavam drosho digachati. When one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature, Krishna says so. So by understanding, Srila Prabhupada explains, by understanding from a bona fide spiritual master how the three modes are controlling and how the Lord is beyond them, one can transcend these modes by devotional service and become fully conscious. So that is the essence. Srila Prabhupada writes in the Prabhupada, it is from those who are fully Krishna conscious that one has to learn the science of the activities in terms of the modes. In the middle of the purport, actually the living entity is not the performer of different activities. He's forced to act because he's situated in a particular body conducted by a particular mode of material nature. So if you have the body of a dog, you must bark. That cannot do anything else. But unless one has the help of spiritual authority, he cannot understand in what position it is actually situated. A man in Krishna consciousness is not controlled by the spell of the material modes. At the end, for one who is able to see things as they are, the influence of material nature gradually ceases. So yes. We go to the PowerPoint. One transcends all the three modes by knowing that everything within the modes takes place under the modes, and by understanding that Krishna's activities are transcendental to the modes. One who engages in undeviating devotion service comes to the level of Brahman, of which Krishna is the source. So, mostly in Bhakti Sastri test from this chapter, there are two questions. Explain how each of the modes are binding. First question. Second is explain the method of transcending the modes, and that's on the screen here now. Good. So we will have in this chapter verse 22 answering Arjuna's first question about the symptoms of a transcendentalist, and then verses 23 to 25 answers his second question about the behavior of such a person. At the end, he discusses Bhakti and how to transcend the modes. So that we read already from the purport, by understanding a bona fide spiritual master, how the modes control all activities, and how the Supreme is beyond them. One can transcend the modes and become fully Krishna conscious. Now 20, we will read 20. Back. Gunanitan atitya trin deya samudbhavam janma mrityu jara dukha vimukto mritamasnute. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, it can be free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So, although one is within the material body, by his advancement in spiritual knowledge, it can be free from the influence of the modes of nature. And then, devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the sign of liberation from material entanglement. That's the sign. If you are performing pure devotional service, you are liberated, implicitly liberated. Prabhupada says that. So by advancement in spiritual knowledge, one can enjoy spiritual happiness while existing in the material body. PowerPoint. Yeah. One can enjoy spiritual happiness even while existing in material body. You see here, Bilva Mangal Thakur was also called Lila Sukha because he was always happy and engaged in thinking of Krishna's pastimes. That as he was so much absorbed in hearing about Krishna that Krishna personally came. He was blind, but Krishna came personally to be with him. That, he has written Krishna Karnamrita, one of the two books Lord Chaitanya found in South India. He brought from South India the 50th chapter of the Brahma Samhita. That's the only chapter we have. And Krishna Karnamrita. Krishna Karnamrita are the ecstasies of Bilva Mangal Thakur in his Siddhadeya of a gopi, an assistant of the gopis. And he writes, Yeah, there's this beautiful poetry of him. Srila Prabhupada quotes it now and then. A verse he quotes a lot is the verse where Bilva Mangal Thakur says, yeah, the liberation stand at my door to serve me. But, so one who is engaged in pure devotional services beyond liberation. That, okay. 21. That's the question of Arjuna. Arjuna uvacha kerlingastin budan etan atito bhavati prabho kimmachagatam shetam tringunam ativartate. Arjuna inquired, "Oh, my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior and how does he transcend the modes of nature?" So two questions. First, the symptoms of a transcendentalist, and the second is his activities. And Krishna will answer them in the next 4 verses. There are 4 verses here. I will read them in one time, then we will discuss. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prakasam Sa Pravittim Sha Mohamev Sa Pavan Moam Ev Sa Pandava Natpasti Sampravittani Navrititani Skankshati Udasina Vadasina Puneryona Vichalyate Gunavartota Ityenam Yo Vatishtati Nanghate Samadukasaka Vasta Samlustas Makanshana Tulya Priyapayo Dhiras Tulya Nindatma Samstuti Manapamanayos Tulyas Tulya Mutari Paksayo Sarbrahma Paritseka Kunatita Sauchate. Some we may find some of them already in chapter 12, verses 13 till 20. But here, Lord Krishna says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandav, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and illusion when they are present or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed to all these reactions of material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally, well embrace and blame honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. So that is a list. We'll discuss the purport. A little further. Yana submitted. A person transcendently situated has no envy and does not hanker for anything. no expectation in this material world, no hankering. It's only want to serve Krishna. When he's actually out of the body, then he's out of the clutches of the material modes of nature. But as long as he's not out of the body, he should be neutral. He should engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord, so that the identity with the material body automatically be forgotten. So this is symptom of one in bhav and prema. Yeah, someone situated in prema is, it's mentioned in the Bible, it's like a drunken man. Drunken man does not know whether he wear clothes or not. So one in prema is forgotten the material body. One is in that situation, one is so energized spiritually that one derives of the energy of the soul. That therefore Srila Prabhupada, he practically didn't sleep for 6 Goswamis, 1.5 hour a night sleeping. That we cannot imitate that. So further, little bit further. Yeah, I don't know where it is, but I see it in my book. The qualities of the material modes in the body will act, but as a spirit soul, the self is aloof from such activities. How does he become aloof? He does not desire to enjoy the body, nor does he desire to get out of it. Thus, constantly situated, the devotee becomes automatically free. He did not try to become free from the influence of the modes of material nature. So it's a neutral position. Everything belongs to Krishna and is meant for his service. But there is no attachment or aversion to anything. So the transcendentally situated person is not affected by false honor that he performs his duty in Krishna consciousness and does not mind when a man honors or dishonors him. So he takes everyone as his dear friend who helps him in his execution of Krishna consciousness, and he does not aid his so-called enemy. He knows perfectly well that he has nothing to do with material existence. Social and political issues do not affect him because he knows the situation of temporary upheavals and disturbances. He does not attempt anything for his own sake. He can attempt anything for Krishna. By such behavior, one becomes actually transcendentally situated. The devotee accepts everything favorable and unfavorable for the service of Krishna. So let's see. As long as one has a material body, he's under the control of the modes of nature. But the spirit soul, the self, is aloof from such activities. By engaging in devotional service, his identity with the material body will be automatically forgotten. So that's a direction for us to always be so absorbed in Krishna and his service that we forget the body. That a devotee accepts things favorable for his service in Krishna consciousness and rejects things unfavorable. He can attempt anything for Krishna, but for his personal self, he does not attempt anything. Yeah. So This is the Harinam Bhakti. I was there last year, I think, or the year before, in Bratislava, Slovakia. I guess, yeah, 26. There's the next verse. And now Krishna will explain how to transcend the modes. How to transcend the modes. And, oh, that's not the wrong one. That is a key memorization verse, right? You have to memorize this verse. The only verse. What, no? No. If you don't have to memorize it, I suggest you do. It's so important. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So we can repeat together. I first recite and you repeat. Mam sayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevata sagunam samatit shaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate mam sayo vyabhicharena Bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatit shaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate mam sayo vyabhicharena Bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatit shaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate mam sayo vyabhicharena Bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatit shaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Let's repeat. Mam, unto me, cha, also, yeah, a person who avyabhicharena, without fail, bhakti yogena, by devotional service, sevate, renders service, saha, he, gunan, the modes of material nature, samatitya, transcending, etan, all these, brahma bhuyaya, elevated to the Brahman platform, kalpate, becomes. So please repeat. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So this is a verse quoted so many times by Srila Prabhupada that so instead of putting his consciousness into material activities, he transfers his consciousness to Krishna activities. One who is engaged in the service of any of the forms of Krishna or his plenary expansions is considered to be transcendentally situated. Now, it has already been explained in the 7th chapter that one who surrenders to Krishna at once surmounts the influence of the modes of material nature. Deva yesha guna maye mama maya drachya mami vaye papachante tamstate vabachamyam. As gold particles are part of a gold mine, the living entity in a spiritual position is as good as gold, as good as Krishna in quantity, because we are part and parcels of Krishna. That's the last verse we will discuss now in this session. So if one is situated in the same transcendental position with the Lord, one cannot serve the Supreme Lord. So one must, if one is not situated in the same transcendental position, so you must come to the Brahman level to serve Krishna directly. But to be a personal assistant to a king, one must acquire the qualifications. So that's the analogy. One must be part of the entourage of the king, and then you can serve the king. So one can attain Supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. This means one must be qualitatively become with Brahman. Means Brahman, we are Brahman. We must act as Brahman to serve the Para-Brahman, Krishna. So we should learn to identify with the body. And that's if we fully identify, we should learn to identify not with the body, but as a soul. That and acting as a spirit soul means acting in devotional service. It's the same. One can attain Supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. This means that one must qualitatively become one with Brahman. By attainment of Brahman, one does not lose his eternal Brahman identity as an individual soul. That, see? Yeah. So one can engage in a transcendental relationship with the Lord by engaging in unfailing devotional service, because devotional service elevates one beyond the modes to the level of Brahman. A person fixed in devotional service retains his infinitesimal separateness and individuality. Otherwise, there could be no Bhakti Yoga. That's not correct. So that should be 27. Text 27. And then we will read some quotes of Prabhupada. So this is an important verse that remember at least the first line. Brahmano ipratistinam. Brahmano ipratistaham means Krishna says Brahman depends on me. So it's subordinate to me. So Brahman is not higher than Krishna. Krishna says Brahman is subordinate to me. Many impersonalists see Brahman as the highest. But Krishna says, no, Brahman depends on me. So they are all mistaken. That Brahmanoi Pratishtanam Amritasya Vayasya Sasvatasya Sudharmasya Sukasya Kantikasya Sa. I'm the base of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and internal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. That the purpose, the Prabhupada first speak on the verse, then concludes the chapter. Both Paramatma and impersonal Brahman are within the Supreme Person. That's clear. When a living entity conditioned by this material nature begins the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, he elevates himself from the position of material existence and gradually rises up to the Brahman conception of the Supreme Lord. This attainment of Brahman conception is the first stage of self-realization. Realize I'm not a body, I'm Brahman, I'm a spirit soul. But He's not actually perfect in Brahman realization. That at this stage, the Brahman realized person is transcendental to material position, but it's not actually perfect in Brahman realization. Because perfect Brahman realization is not just realizing I'm not his body, it's realizing who am I? I'm a spirit soul. And what is a spirit soul? It's a servant of Krishna. Therefore, it's not perfect. It's just a stage towards perfection. That the four Kumaras were situated first in the impersonal Brahman conception of the absolute truth, but then gradually came to the platform of devotional service. One cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman. One who cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman runs the risk of falling down again. Thus, this verse of the Bhagavatam, Yen Yeri Vindaksha Vimuktamana Nastyast Bhava Abhisudha Budaya. Aruya Kashena Prampadam Padanta Padantya Dudratina Nisha. Yeah. That this verse says that those who believe that the Brahman is a supreme destination and they think they reach Brahman, Vimuktamananas, they think themselves liberated. But their intelligence is Avisuddha Buddhaya, is impure, because they don't know the actual identity of Brahman. The actual identity of Brahman. I'm a person, I'm a servant of Krishna. The servant of the king enjoys almost on an equal level with the king. And so eternal happiness, impersonal happiness, and eternal life accompany devotional service. Therefore, realization of Brahman, or eternity, or imperishability is included in devotional service. This is already possessed by a person who is engaged in devotional service. So, this realization is included. One who is perfect in devotional service, as realized Krishna is in his heart, and as realized I'm not his body, I'm a servant of Krishna. So that's included. Of course, we have to go gradually to these stages. It's not gradually, we go up in the modes, and then when our heart is pure, we transcend the modes, we come to Brahman realization, and we become attracted to Krishna. And then we come to the realization of Krishna in our heart, our Shakti. And then we start to develop love for Krishna. Bhava is a preliminary stage. And then Prema. Yeah. Yeah. So Prema is the highest and includes all the other realizations. So by engaging in devotion and serving full Krishna consciousness, is immediately situated in the transcendental position, and his unlawful desire to control material nature is removed. So if you perform pure devotional service just to please Krishna without asking something in return, just out of love, then you are transcendental to the modes in your activities because you don't get a reaction. You don't get a reaction, you become purified in heart. So therefore, the process of devotional service, beginning with hearing, chanting, remembering the prescribed 9 methods for realization devotional service, should be practiced in the association of devotees. By such association, by the influence of the spiritual master, one's material desire to dominate is removed, and one becomes firmly situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So that's very important. Don't think I'm at home just alone practicing Krishna consciousness. My heart will become purified. No, Prabhupada says, should be practiced in the association of devotees. And then by such association, first, by such association. Second, by the influence of the spiritual master, you act on the order of the spiritual master. Then your material desire to dominate material nature is removed from the heart. Three things, very important. And that one should always engage in the service of the Lord, should eat remnants of foodstuffs offered to the deity, smell the flowers to the lotus feet of the Lord, see the places where the Lord had his transcendental pastimes, read of the different activities of the Lord, his reciprocation of love with his devotees, chant always the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Prabhupada is very practical here. He's saying really that is what you have to do to transcend the modes. Very clearly, practically. Observe the fasting days commemorating the appearance and disappearance of the Lord and his devotees. By following such a process, one becomes completely detached from material activities. One can thus situate him in the Brahma Jyoti or the different varieties of the Brahman conception equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality. Good. That's very important. Information. So here the essence again. Knowing oneself to be Brahman or spirit is the foundational realization for all spiritual knowledge. By engaging in devotional service, one further realizes that Krishna is the source of Brahman and is full of 6 opulences. When a devotee approaches, when a devotee approaches Krishna, there is an exchange of these 6 opulences. For thus the devotee eternal life and imperishable happiness automatically accompany devotional service. So in this section, what we need to understand is Arjuna's questions and Krishna's answers. That how can we taste spiritual happiness now? If we practice this process appropriately in association of devotees, we can transcend now. That there are arguments against impersonalists, Brahmani Pratishtanam, that if you get the question how to defeat impersonalism, the impersonalist statement that Brahman is the highest, based on this 14th chapter. Then you recite Brahmani Pratishtanam. That so we can think about ourselves. Are we doing? Are we following this process described in the last paragraph here by Srila Prabhupada? Evaluate yourself. How do we become aloof of things in this world? Or are we not affected by social and political issues and social media and all these things? The answer is here. That so let's see. Can read a few quotes of Prabhupada. Now, not so many quotes on this chapter. That because Prabhupada didn't give much lectures on this chapter on the 3 modes, unless the last verse and last 2 verses. That because Prabhupada probably was more stressing on how to get out of material nature. That by devotional service, the direct process. So we'll see. How is the devotee infallible? Therefore, anyone who is earnestly serious in heart and soul about being in intimate touch with the personality of Godhead in the relationship of transcendental loving service will always be infallible in words and action. The reason is that the Supreme Lord is the absolute truth, and anything earnestly dovetailed with the absolute truth attains the same quality. Further, This long quotes, little too long to go through. We can read the last one. Can someone read why devotees prefer to realize Krishna?
Why do devotees prefer to realize Krishna? Narada Yudhishthira, the impersonal Brahman is Krishna himself, because Krishna is sort of the impersonal Brahman. He is the origin of the transcendental peace sought by great saintly persons. Yet he, the supreme person, is your most dear friend and constant well-wisher, and is intimately related to you as the son of your maternal uncle. Indeed, he is always like your body and soul. He is worshipable, yet he acts as your servant and sometimes as your spiritual master. The same Krishna, the supreme personality of God, acted as the supreme friend and relative of the Pandavas. And sometimes he even acted as their servant. How? By carrying a letter from the Pandavas to Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. Because Krishna was the well-wisher of the Pandavas. He also acted as Guru. How? By becoming the spiritual master of Arjuna. Arjuna accepted Krishna as his spiritual master. Sisesteham Sadima Om Prabhu. And Krishna sometimes says like him. For example, the Lord said, Asochan and Socias Tvam Pragya Avatamsa Bhashasi. While speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. The Lord also said, Utasva Kasmanam Idam Visame Samupastita. My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? Such was the intimate relationship between the Pandavas and Krishna. In the same way, a pure devotee of the Lord is always with Krishna through thick and thin. His way of life is Krishna as Krishna. And the personal realization is superior to impersonal. So the devotees are experiencing superior pleasure because they are having loving exchanges with Krishna, the Supreme Brahman.
Thank you. So, any questions? Good. Yes, please.
So, yeah, in third chapter, it said that in the third chapter, it said that the material nature is the doer of all the activities, even though the conditions or things that we do themselves.
Yeah.
For someone who has transcendent modes, who is the doer of activities for them?
And one who has transcendental knowledge knows that he's the doer because he's activating material nature by his desire, by his attachment. That's what the soul does. He knows that is what I'm doing. And the rest is done by material nature under the direction of the super soul. So he does not think himself the only doer. He's one of the factors of doing. But the body and the body that moves and that executes these desires, it's done by the super soul. That will be again discussed in the 18th chapter. We will go deeper into it.
Thank you.
Good. Good, thank you very much. Then we resume again at noontime, 12 minutes. Thank you. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharana. Nirvishesha Singhavadi Bhaskacharya Dasataram. Srila Prabhupada Ki. We are starting now chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person. In the first part of this chapter 15, Krishna will explain the analogy of the banyan tree that in the 13th chapter, Krishna has given us knowledge of 6 subject matters: Kshetra, Kshetra, Jnana, Jneyam, Prakriti, Purush, and that knowledge helps us to liberate us from material nature, and then to come out of the conditioned state. Now, in the 14th chapter, Krishna explained the 3 modes, and now we can transcend the modes to come to liberation. And now in this chapter 15, Krishna will give an analogy. And I will explain the analogy of the banyan tree and how to get out of the tree with knowledge and attachment, the sort of knowledge and attachment, and become a liberated person. That because Krishna says we are part and parcels of him, and now we are transmigrating because of our desire to enjoy material nature. And then he describes the process of transmigration of the soul. And at the end of the chapter, he speaks the Trisloka Gita. He will explain in 5 verses that the entire summary of the Bhagavad Gita, stating that the Purushottam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is above the conditioned and the liberated souls. And if we have that knowledge, we perform devotional service, we become transcendentally situated. So that is summary of this chapter. Now we will start with learning about the banyan tree. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Uktva Mulamada Sakam Ashvatam Prau Apyayam Shadam Se Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and it branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. And who knows this tree is the knower of the tree. So we have here the tree on the screen. So what the verse said, there's an imperishable banyan tree with its roots upwards. So that's we see on the screen here. And its roots upwards. So the roots are here, right? And its branches down. The branches are here, down. Its leaves are the Vedic hymns. Leaves here, Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. That so one must know this tree. What does it mean knowing the tree? Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport. Yes. The purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is Krishna conscious and who is engaged in devotional service knows the Vedas. It's so simple as that. The tree of this material world has no end. For one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The problem, and this. So if you see how the only way out of the tree is detachment. That's what Prabhupada says in the purport. Yeah. If one can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, one can get out of it. You must know the way out, exit, how to get out of the tree. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. So, because we become neutral to everything, it belongs to Krishna, not to me, and therefore I use it in Krishna's service. And that is perfect detachment, doing that always. The fruit represents the results of the living entities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. These are the fruits. They are here. Fruits. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. The fruits of the tree. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water their branches down and roots up. So Prabhupada says, yes, we can, there is not such a tree in this world, but we can see such a tree if you go to the bank of water, and there the tree is reflected in the water, and his branches are down and his roots up. But the real tree, that's the real tree here up. The real tree is the spiritual world. So this material world is a perverted reflection of the real tree in the spiritual world. That desire is the cause of things. So reflection is based on desire, our desire to enjoy. It's based on desire. Being situated in this reflected material light, one who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. And that study is called Sankhya. That, yeah. Further, the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, and one must have the same variegatedness. But in reality, reflection is temporary, and thus this world. That's why it's a reflection. It's temporary. That sometimes is seen, sometimes is not seen. If there are clouds, then we don't see the reflection. But origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal, thus the eternal world. Material reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. So we have to cut off this tree at the root here. But when it is said that a person who knows the Vedas, it is assumed to know to cut off attachment to this material world. That's the same. We know the Vedas, we can cut off our attachment. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of God himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree in the spiritual world. Now, we can go back here. So, just correction. So the living entities are Krishna's eternal fragmental parts. They are now struggling for existence, being entangled in the branches of that tree. That is a summary of this section from verse 1 to 7, which we are discussing. That's the whole summary. See the banyan tree. Do they have banyan trees in Florida? No? No banyan trees. No. Okay. One must detach oneself from the reflection of the spiritual world by surrendering to Krishna and go to the spiritual world. We surrender to Krishna, we get out of it. Then we become detached. The entanglement of the material world is compared to a reflection of a banyan tree. The living entity wanders from one tree, one branch to another, trying to enjoy the fruits of this tree, and can find no end to it. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflection. One must detach one's, The material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness. So what's here must be there in the spiritual world. But in reality, the purpose of the Vedas is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree in the spiritual world. Depending on which branch a living entity is located, he will possess a certain body and specific types of senses according to the combination of the mode that influence that part of the tree. He will be attracted to particular twigs or sense objects. So we have made our house in that tree somewhere, in that, and we think we can stay there eternally. Let's read the verse 2. First read the verse. Adashortvam parishtastasya saka guna pravitta visaya pravala adasamulani anushantatani karmanu bandini manushaloke. The branches of this tree extend downward and upwards, nourished by the three modes of nature. The twigs are the object of the senses. The tree also has its roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Okay, look back to our tree. So the tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. You see here, left, the nourishment. When a particular material modes are proportionally greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense objects. Here, twigs, sense objects. Yeah, attached to the twigs. So we try to enjoy varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses here. The ears, the nose, the eyes, and so on. They are the senses, which are attached to the enjoyment for different sense objects. The subsidiary roots are attachments and aversions. Roots here, attachment and aversion, subsidiary roots, which are byproducts of the different varieties of suffering and enjoyment. That suffering and enjoyment. The tendencies toward piety and impiety are considered to develop from this secondary root. That, and then it comes down to, although one enjoys the result of various activities in the upper planetary systems here, he has to come down again to the earthly planets, a little lower, to renew his karma of fruitive activities, and then he's promoted again to higher up to the heavenly planets. The planet of human beings is considered the field of activities. The field of activities. And as a human being, you can go down or up. That the heavenly planets, they come only down. And the animal species, they go only up to the human form. So it's the human form which is an essential. Earthly planets are important to get out of the tree. So that's the further description of the tree. Let's see. Depending on which branch a living entity is located, it will possess a certain material body, a specific type of senses, and according to the combination of modes that influence that part of the tree, it will attract to particular traits or sense objects. And now verse 3, 4. We'll first read the verse on Narupamasya tato palapyate nanto nashadena sa sampapishta. Asvatamenam suvirudam mulam sangasastrena ditena shitva. Tata padam tat parimarhitavyam yasmin katana nivahtanti bhuj. Tameva sadyam purusham papatye yata praviti pasita puram. Translation. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down the strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, of whom everything began, and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Yes, go back to our yes. One has to find the cause of the tree. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out the origin of the tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then by understanding, one becomes really detached from this false reflection of reality and knowledge, and one can cut the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. So we have to go to the real tree. Therefore, one must learn detachment, and by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually knowledge. As a result of such discussion and association of devotee, one comes to the personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender unto him. Surrender, and this is the result of performing devotional service, hearing, chanting, etc. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders to Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from the material extension. So that's the essence, the real form of this tree. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. One must search out the origin of this tree, the Supreme Lord, through the association of pure devotees. By hearing their discussions of spiritual science, one comes to surrender to Krishna and automatically becomes detached from this material world. And now, one who is completely detached from this material world is a liberated person. And Lord Krishna explains the explains characteristics of such liberated person. So, 5. That's a verse quoted many times by Srila Prabhupada. Nirmamamo, nirmanamo chita sangha dosha, adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama, dantver vimukta sukha dukkha samyer gacchanta muda padanafyam. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association will understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. So many things: free from false prestige, illusion, false association, who understands the eternal, who are done with material lust, and we are freed from the dualities, and know how to surrender. So, Srila Prabhupada discusses some of these qualities in the purport, that a few lines down. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Further, the whole world moves under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of the world. At the end, after this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is not actually his own. When one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all the dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes fully knowledge. Then it is possible to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what is our own in this material world? What do we possess? Nothing. Do we possess something? The only thing we possess is consciousness. Consciousness we possess. That's our that. And even that comes from the soul. Spirit souls belong also to Krishna. So we can look at the slides. Yeah, that we looked. The discerning process begins with freedom from illusion of pride, that one is the Lord of the world. It frees one from false association, and one can then cultivate spiritual knowledge. Upon gaining an understanding of things as they are, one becomes free from dualities and can surrender to the Supreme Lord. This is the banyan tree. Okay. There are some quotes here. Let's see if we find some. Yeah, we will read a short one. Kapila Muni herein advises his mother devotee that if she wants to be free from material attachment, she should increase her attachment for the sadhus or devotees who are completely free from all material attachment. That this is in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25, and then yeah. Prasangamacho prasham atmanaka vidu naiva sadhusu krita mokshatvarmatapivam. What Kapila says, attachment to these material things is the cause of one's entanglement in this world. But the same attachment is, if transferred to the sadhu, is the cause of liberation. That if we are attached to following the spiritual master and the Mahajans, that so by association of devotees, attachment to association of devotees, again association of devotees. But if we want to make progress, we must associate with devotees. That may be sometimes difficult, but this is the only way. We have to associate with devotees and learn from them. That okay. Yes. Text 6. Nata pasayate suyo nasik sanka na pavaka katkatvana nivartate tadama paramam mama. The supreme abode of mind is not illumined by the sun or the moon, nor by fire or electricity, those which never return to this material world. So Krishna has explained, you have to go to the original tree, that's the spiritual world, and that spiritual world, no need of sun. That so the shining effulgence of those planets called Vaikuntha constitute the shining, the sky known as the Brahma Jyotir. And I'll try, I think I have a picture of that. And I try to dedicate it. Yeah, it's here. We have to make it. Right. It's not 100% clear, but you can see it more or less. That you have the Karana Ocean is the Viraja River. It's the border between the spiritual and the material realm. And then you have the Brahma Jyoti, and then you have Vaikuntha, and then above you have this lotus here. That's Krishna Loka. These are all the other planets, planetary systems, and so we are here. And we have to go to get there. That we have to cut off this tree, this banyan tree, with attachment by performing devotional service, and then we become Brahman, and then we go higher. We must realize Krishna. That so it's the shining effulgence of all those planets. You see all these planets here. That's what we are speaking about. These planets in the Vaikuntha Loka that constitute of the shining sky known as the Brahma Jyoti. That's also the Brahma Jyoti here, but they are situated. At a certain moment, planets are situated in the Brahma Jyoti. See? That the effulgence is emanating, actually the effulgence is emanating from the planet Krishna Loka, Loka Vrindavan, is coming from here, the effulgence. That's the most effulgence. Is Krishna Loka. That in part of that shining effulgence is covered by the Ma Tattva. So this is the Ma Tattva here. this part. Other than this, the major portion of that shining sky is full of spiritual planets here. And the highest spiritual planet is Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna Loka. So in his conditioned life, the living entity considers himself to be the Lord of the material world. So we think ourselves the Lord here. Now, just for a moment, but we think we are the powerful Lord who surveys everything. I'm the enjoyer. But in his liberated state, he enters the spiritual kingdom and he gives up his enjoying spirit and engages in devotional service. But the spirit soul enjoys much more here than here. Here he enjoys power, eternal bliss, eternal life, and full of knowledge. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of Gandhi becoming detached here from this tree. And one has to, here to do that, one has to associate here with devotees who are in Krishna consciousness. Where we must here become attached to devotional service and take it very serious, as described in the 12th chapter, and that's the only way to get out of here. Only by pure transcendental service one can get out of here. So that's a visual presentation. Share up, go back to up here. So the surrendering process begins with freedom from illusion, pride, that one is the Lord of the Lord, is free from false association. Then one can cultivate spiritual knowledge upon gaining an understanding of things as they are, and one becomes free from dualities and can surrender to the Supreme Lord, and one gets out of this tree. In the spiritual world, which is illumined by the Brahma Jyoti, everyone is liberated and enjoys eternal bliss and eternal life, full of knowledge. By association of devotees, one can extricate oneself from this false reflection of reality and transfer himself to the eternal realm. Good. Now Krishna will point to our identity. Who are we? That's the last verse from this section. Yes. Is this famous verse? Mamaivam Shoshiveda Shiva Bhuta Sanatana Mana Sastri Indriyane Pragatistani Kasati. If someone asks, who are you? You quote this verse. That's it. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the senses, which include the mind. So we see here, living entity is a fragmental part and parcel of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada says, Sanatan, eternal. We are eternal, a part of Krishna. We never became a part of Krishna. We are eternally a part of Krishna. That's something we cannot understand, but that's a fact. We are eternally a part of Krishna. The Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary is called Vishnu Tattva. So there are, as Vishnu Tattva, Krishna expands as Svamsa in many forms, which are all equal to him. Equal means Vishnu Tattva forms, Svamsa. But he he expands him not only as Svansa, he expands himself also as Vibhinamsa. And these are the living entities. That, in other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion, and the living entities are the separated expansions, personal and separate. The separated expansions, the living entities are eternally servitors. That, the separate expansions of the living entities have their identities. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, one is always liberated. So Krishna will explain that further in this chapter. There are the conditioned and the liberated living entities. And I'm above them, controlling both. So we are always controlled in the liberated state or in the conditioned state. But on the liberated state, we are controlled by the spiritual energy, and by the conditioned state, we are controlled by the material energy. Yeah. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul. Misuse means I want Krishna's position to enjoy. This is mine, that is for my enjoyment. And there you go. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal as the Supreme Lord. In his liberated state, he is freed from this material condition, and is under the engagement of the transcendental service of the Lord. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. Becomes a big struggle. Everyone is struggling in this world. It is clear in a few lines further, it is clear, however, in this verse that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body with mind and senses. It's covered by the material body, mind and sense. It's covered. We don't need the mind and senses. We have our own spiritual mind and senses, which are inactive now, but it's covered by that. And when he's liberated in a material, this material covering perishes. But his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. That, so it's good to understand what is liberation. Liberation is also described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto 2, 9. I think it's here somewhere. Oh, I think it's in the 10th. It's in the 210. Yeah, that's what I'm searching. In the beginning of the 10th canto. Sarapena 210.6. Yeah. Niroda Pyanu Sayanam Atmana Saha Saktibi Muktir Itvanyatarupam Svarupena Kapastiti Muktir Itvanyatasupam. And the meaning is liberation is the permanent situation of the living entity after he gives up the changeable, gross and subtle material bodies. That is the definition of liberation according to the Bhagavata, mukti itvan yata rupam svarupena vyapastiti. Prabhupada quotes it regularly. That's, yeah. When a living entity gives up its material body, embodiment, and enters into the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body. Note of that. Revives his spiritual body. It's there, it becomes active again. And in his spiritual body, he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Prabhupada was in that situation, even in the body. His spiritual senses were active. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the personality as is. Further, at liberation, living entities gets a spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being at the end, last sentence, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord, just as parts of parcels of gold are also gold. And we have here, last slide, in the 7, living entities, moment. The living entities are eternal parts of Krishna and possess fragmental portion of his qualities, including minute independence. Everything minute. Due to misuse of independence, the living entity become unnaturally captivated by Maya, and rather than achieving pleasure, they are forced to struggle and suffer while endeavoring for material pleasure. So Krishna says this all living entities are my part and parcels in this material world, but they are, instead of serving me, they are now struggling with the senses and trying to exploit material nature. He said it before in 7.5. Apariyamitasyam me, Bhakti vidime. So he said, besides this, material nature is a higher spiritual nature. And the living entity is busy with trying to exploit its inferior nature. That's stupid, but that's what we are doing. We are superior. Living entities are eternal fragmental parts, possess fragmental portions of the qualities including minute independence. Due to the misuse of independence, the living entity becomes unnaturally captivated by Maya. That you are arrested by the prison guard of this material world. And they are forced to struggle and suffer while endeavoring for material pleasure. And Maya kicks you in the face. Why are you not serving Krishna? And then, because the source personal individuality is eternally, cannot at any time merge with the Supreme Lord. My spiritual body is the same quality with the Supreme Lord, and real liberation means reviving one's spiritual body upon entering into the spiritual world. That's real liberation. Let's see if there is a quote which is not too long. No, these are long quotes. No, long quotes. You can read them at your own pace. Any questions? About the 1 and 3. Yes?
So, Maharaj, we understand that Krishna has eternal energy, and there is external and then marginal. So, spiritual, like us, we are from marginal or internal?
No, we are of the higher nature. We are the spiritual nature, but we are very small, and therefore we are called marginal. And as marginal energy, we can push whatever button we want. I want to connect to the material energy, the green and the red button. or the blue button, connect with the spiritual energy. And how does the soul do that? With attachment. Where is attachment go, that's the connection we make. And if you are connecting with the material energy, you get degraded, you get karma, so many things. If you connect with the spiritual energy, you become purified, and at the end you go to the spiritual world. So devotional service is a connection. That's our business.
All the souls are marginal, or there are some which are like Nitya Siddha, they are in spiritual world, they are from internal energy.
Although the souls who are Nitya Siddhi are also marginal energy. But they are absorbed in the eternal energy, in the spiritual energy, and they have no desire to come here. Only a few stupid. Anyway.
I understood somewhere I heard that there are separate entities which come out of internal energy. And even, like us who get liberated, enter there, we are never equal to them.
Yeah, but there are not only living entities in material world. There are also Krishnas, yeah, as spiritual, as different spiritual energies. And like the gopis in Vrindavan, they are Krishna's, part of Krishna's Ladini, especially Radharani is part of Krishna's Ladini Shakti. So they are Shakti, and they are different. They are Krishna's energies. That's different. Good. Thank you very much. Then at 4 p.m. Yeah. Yes.
Second verse. This part of the is considered a field of activities. When we explain about it, does that mean that karma only happens here? Like, does it happen in upper planetary system?
In the earthly planetary systems, many planets, that's the field of activity. And it's a key field. Here you can go up or down, or you can go to the spiritual world, all directions. Because the human form of life is special. The human form of life have the capacity to expand our consciousness unlimitedly. That's the heavenly planets, they don't have that. If you get a body on the heavenly planets, the tendency for sense gratification and the opportunity is 1,000 times more, and you cannot expand, you cannot get out of it. And in the lower planetary system, you are like an animal. You don't know who you are, completely covered. So only the human form is that. And with the human form, you can go up to the higher planetary systems. You can go down to the hellish planets and so on, or you can expand your consciousness spiritually by devotional service and get out of it. So the human form is crucial. That on the heavenly planets, they are getting rid of their karma, good karma. And when they get the this up, they come back to here. And in the lower planetary systems, they go healthy up to the species, coming to the human form again. So it's a crucial form, the human form. Of course, there are many human forms, not only let's speak 400,000. Well, some are heavenly forms. But yes, the human form is crucial in all this. Does that clarify?
Yes, sir. But in addition to that, I just wanted to repeat what Prabhupada.
Yeah.
After one enjoys the result of virtuous activities in the upper mental system, he comes down to this earth and removes his karma of the new activities for promotion.
Yeah. So that is for those who come from the heavenly planets and they are still infected by the desire to enjoy. They do everything to go back. That's called karma kanda. The karma kanda section is meant for that. To go to the heavenly planets, come back, and then go again and come back, go again, come back. That's karma kanda. And therefore Srila Vyasadeva, when wrote all this karma kanda and stretched that so much, but he forgot to stress devotional service. And his spiritual master Narada Muni was very upset with him. That you did not glorify the Supreme Personality of God enough and devotional service, because that's the process to get out of the system. So don't come down and renew your karma. No, come down and take the devotional service and get out. But that's karma kanda. Srila Prabhupada speaks about a certain kind of souls who want to remain in this world and enjoy. They come down and they renew their karma. That is not a general statement for everyone. We have to see that in the context of this purport. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Sorry, Prabhupada.